All right. Well, in today's video, I'd like to talk about old-fashioned remedies, homemade stuff, things that you hear get passed on from generation to generation, things that old guy down the street, that grandma, she'll like bust out when wrinkled. They'll bust out when they hear someone's not feeling well, and they'll be like, "Yeah, you got to try this." And we've moved away from a lot of those home remedies, but a lot of them are good. A lot of them are probably poison. No, they're not poison, but some of them probably have a lot of like scientific background, but we just don't acknowledge that because we don't think about it, because we don't test and analyze it. When you actually look at it, you're like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. One basic thing is the idea that when you are not feeling well, let's say you have a cold, warm things are generally good for you, which kind of makes sense because even if you're feverish, like I get that initial spike or when you feel really, really hot, you want something that will cool you down, which makes sense. And a lot of people, they'll argue, be like, no, you need to feed the fever, fueling the fever so that it can kill the germs. I'm like, I actually don't think that that's accurate. My experience is that stoking a fever doesn't necessarily make it go away faster. Now, there's an idea of like when you sleep and you're resting and your body kind of spikes and you sweat it out, sometimes that is good. That there's like you want to break the fever, but a lot of the times you don't want to promote it or provoke it, especially when it's like a child. I don't think that sweating it out is necessarily great for them because they can't regulate their temperature. You want to bring it down. And I'm not against like antibiotics or anything like. Actually, I think I'm a little bit more pro antibiotic than a lot of doctors you'll come across, based on what I'm seeing with infections. Most infections, they may start out as viral, but oddly enough, do eventually become a bacteria or leads to a bacterial infection somewhere. And that's why people get frustrated and confused because they'll go to their doctor. They'll be like, wow, it looks viral to me. And in the beginning, it is, and it looks like that. But then after a couple of days, the fever's still there. And now they are like very, very congested and they're not looking well. And an antibiotic is probably in order at this point. So is there anything you can do to avoid or reduce the risk of the fever being persistent and evolving to something more serious or bacterial or just taking too long? The wet sock therapy, that seems to actually bring down fevers quite well. The other one is like the kind of the poultice idea of like slicing a potato or an onion or something, putting that in your sock at night. That actually it works on kind of like the physics of the body, where if the body senses that it's cold somewhere, it innately knows to send warmth there. So obviously if your head is really, really hot, like, and usually that's where the most experience of the fever is in your head. You don't really say I got hand fever, but then you'd think like your body has like extremes, and maybe if your feet are chilled overnight, but having you don't want to like keep them cold, but you want to give them the opportunity to warm up, it will draw congestion and heat away from your head, which will make you feel better faster. Things to avoid when you're sick: cold foods, sugars, dairy. Don't have them when you're sick. Yuck, 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 yuck. It's just going to increase the viral effect. It's going to increase mucus. It's going to make you feel more tired and more drained. What should you have? Hot soups, stews, teas, all the stuff that's kind of common sense. Now, if someone says, well, there's no scientific evidence that that would help, like with the virus, that's not what's happening. When you're sick, it's not literally just one virus or type of virus fighting your immune system. There's multiple changes in your body's chemistry and body systems that are changing their role temporarily to correct an imbalance. And that's why infections are not just cut and dry that, okay, you came in contact with a virus that you're going to get sick. What usually happens is that there's some kind of predisposing element. You might have been run down. You might have been cold. You might have been damp. You might have been poor, not sleeping well, not eating well. And these are things that we casually say hurts our immune system. It probably is impairing a natural response that the body does to compensate for infectious agents. Because I don't think that the immune system is just dealing with viruses and bacteria. Now, if someone has a yeast overgrowth or tendency for yeast or candida or whatever it is, their body's in a constant battle. There's always something that's being eliminated, compensated for, trying to control the balance of bacteria. Like we are full of bacteria. We're more bacteria than we are cells, which is crazy. But at the same time, it's like, if that's the case, then why aren't we working on our bacteria as opposed to our cellular health? I mean, we do things for our immunity and our immune cells and our body tissues. But if we know that we're more bacteria than tissue, then we should maybe pay attention to the bacteria. Maybe the bacteria is waging its own war. We don't even pay attention to it until we're sick. Yeah. So I'm not saying you just do a probiotic and your immune system will be fine. It might help, but it'll also help if you weren't dysglycemic, meaning you didn't have poor sugar regulation, which then would be promoting bacteria that is pathogenic in nature anyways. These are like deep thoughts. Back to home remedies. Chicken soup. Why is chicken soup good? Besides it being hot and easy nutrition, I think the fat has a lot to do with, I think it has, I don't want to say an insulating effect, but there is a compensatory effect that when the body sees a lot of fat coming in, the organs actually get enriched. There's a balance of like an illness and low resources versus high nutrition. My hands are too... Oh, my hands look huge. Gotta adjust my angle a little bit. I don't like... that's a little bit more center. So, when you are sick, your resources were low. And things that are nutritionally dense, and which fat is, it's going to feed your organs. That's just how it is. You can't change that. You can't change my mind. Other cool home remedy, infections aside, hair growth. A lot of people, they want to know how to prevent hair loss, improve the thickness and volume of their hair. Rosemary oil and rosemary extract, that seems to get a lot of popularity. I think that's one component. I think you actually need to work on micronutrition, meaning all the minerals and things, and biotin and silica are okay to like supplement with, but I would say do an enzyme so that you can hyper absorb your nutrition, which then will feed into secondary tissues more effectively. I think you also need a scalp routine where it's like proper brushing, proper washing, stimulation of the follicle without it being overstimulating, light therapy, avoiding hats, avoiding gels and sprays and crummy stuff like that. Be careful what you put on your scalp, because the more poison you put into it, it's going to kill the cells faster, the follicles. Dyeing it also has a big impact. So I don't know, think about it. So I would do a combination of all those natural remedies. Light therapy in particular, I think is very, very effective. There's good research on that. It's not so much a natural home remedy, but you can do it at home. The oils, the castor oil, like massages occasionally, just so it's not so irritating, or doesn't. You don't want to do anything that's yanking the hair out either. Micro rollers. That also is part of it. Just you kind of want to get this waking up. I think that's really true for any part of the body. Another area is your gut health. And some people like fermented foods. I find a lot of people who, when they start using them, they find that it really, really bothers their tummy at first. And it's almost to the point where it turns them off from using it. So like if someone says, I get some gut issues, and a friend of mine said to try sauerkraut, that's like bringing a cannon to like a thumb more. I don't know. It's overkill. Your tummy won't know. It's not going to self-correct. Some people, they're like, no, it didn't seem to bother me. Where other people, they're like, I sat on the toilet for 14 hours straight, and I thought there was nothing left of me. So maybe start slow. Maybe try some prebiotic, like a MSP. Let's try some prebiotics, like MSP prebiotic. It's a digestive resistant starch, which you can titre or control the dosing. So I would start with like a pinch or a half a teaspoon in some water. And the starch from the potato that we don't absorb acts as a healthy fiber and can stabilize a disrupted gut biome and start encouraging the growth of the good bacteria and regularity and getting rid of your bloating, and helps with cravings, my experience says. So that's something you should consider, as opposed to something a little bit more aggressive, or just sticking with like a standard probiotic. Because a lot of people will do probiotics, or they'll say, I have yogurt for my probiotics, which I actually find the bad outrules the good, unfortunately, because the yogurt, that is dairy based, is going to screw up your gut anyways, despite the good bacteria that's in there. Yeah, I said it. So prebiotics, I think, are good in like the isolate form, like the prebiotic that I mentioned earlier, MSP, because I feel like you can have much better tight control over how much you're taking and graduate yourself to more and more of a higher concentration over time. And you'll see the effects. Like the effects, it's not like it's going to take weeks for there to be a benefit. It has effects as soon as you start using it. You just have to get the right dosage, which is trial and error, which is okay. So we talked about infections. We talked about hair. We talked about our gut. Well, how about even like sauna? I think that's a great something that you can do at home if you have a personal sauna, or something that you can, like, it's a therapy that you can do to yourself. That saunas help with the body's natural inclination to detoxify itself, even if you're just looking at the level of sweating. Sweating is a nice way to help stabilize electrolytes. So clearly, if someone's got like high blood pressure, they usually are initially cautioned, be like, oh, be careful because it can increase your blood pressure because you're in a elevated temperature environment. In the moment, yeah, like if you have an acute like spike in your blood pressure, you're like 180 over 120, don't jump in the sauna. But if you have casually elevated, like I have higher blood pressure than I should, I'm trying to cut down my salt, I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight, then saunas over time can reduce your general blood pressure. Okay, so it's obviously not an emergency therapy. It's a lifestyle adaptation so that you can start stabilizing your electrolytes so that your blood pressure isn't spiking. That's just part of it. Foot baths. That's another good one. A lot of people don't do that anymore. That's sort of like a very, like, 2 generations ago, our ancestors knew about the benefits of that, even just for relaxation purposes. But it's also great for stomach pain or indigestion. It's also good for migraines. It's good for brain fog. It's good for anxiety. So hot water preferably. And tolerating that for about 20 minutes. It's not tolerable. Once you're used to the heat, it doesn't bother you. It's actually enjoyable. So there's a bunch of random things I talked about today. Hopefully one of those things stuck in your brain and made sense to you. So don't be afraid of home remedies. Don't be afraid of trying grandma's cough syrup if it's homemade. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Okay. Till next time.